Hey everyone, welcome to the Product Startup Podcast, a podcast that helps bring your product idea to life by chatting with successful inventors, product designers, and other industry professionals. This podcast is run by Mako Design and Invent and hosted by Philip Belecha. Our goal here is to get to the bottom of what makes a product successful. From initial idea to putting your product on the shelf, we're taking you step by step to build a functional product and scale your product business. Now onto the show.
The Product Startup, Episode 35. In today's episode, we learn from Paul Potratz about promoting our business after we launch and creating a 90-day advertising strategy on a minimal budget. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Product Startup Podcast, where we talk about turning ideas into successful products step by step. I'm Philip Belecha, and thanks for listening today. In the last episode, I addressed some of the emails I get around procrastination, fear, and limiting beliefs like lack of money, time, or skills. And I also talked about my motivation for launching this site and podcast and for working on my own products. Sorry if you downloaded the episode twice. I exported my audio at 1.5 times by accident, and that's the speed I edit at, and I forgot to check the episode before uploading. So now that I've scraped that pterodactyl egg off my face, make sure to check out episode 34 if you've sat on your idea for a while and you haven't done anything with it, or if you've lost your momentum, that episode is definitely for you. Before we get started, I wanted to highlight one reviewer on iTunes, Johnny32190, who wrote, "Finally, a place to learn about the steps needed to start and grow a physical product-based business. There are plenty of podcasts about being an entrepreneur, but only Philip's The Product Startup covers the challenges and subsequent solutions unique to having a physical product. Great guests, great information, and I've been binge listening for days." Johnny, thanks for leaving me a note and letting me know what you think of the show. And as always, I appreciate everyone that sends in comments and questions. That lets me know how I can make the show better for you. So let's get started. Hi, Paul. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Philip, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
I'm really excited to have you on because I think we have similar outlook, at least when it comes to success. I believe in giving content freely and definitely think that the universe will provide. There's a large enough slice of pie out there for everybody. So I'm happy to have you on the show talking about branding and marketing with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I agree. I think we have the exact same mindset. And it was actually earlier this week, I did a podcast with Bob Burg. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is the guy, he's the author behind The Go Giver. And that's his entire strategy. He wrote this book years ago, but a fabulous book. But it talks all about what you and I believe.
I'll put that in the show notes for everybody to check out. So we also culminated our corporate careers in the same way. We both worked jobs that we didn't enjoy. And you ended up building your business and podcast through that because you were looking for some entrepreneurial resources yourself that weren't out there. So can you mention that just really quickly?
Yeah, definitely. So, years ago when I started the ad agency, and it was just me and my dog, and that's what I started to call it, Dude and His Dog Agency. But I, would go everywhere. I would go to the different organizations and try to learn. And a lot of times the established business owners, established agency owners didn't want to share anything. They would keep it secret. And I would go to the different, retired entrepreneurs, and I'd ask them about social media, and they're like, "What's that?" So I struggled. I feel like I'd be so much farther advanced if, I could have really had that help there at that time. And it's what's led us, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but our newest venture called The Growth Mindset.
Great that you finished on that point, because what we're going to be doing today is covering a branding and marketing strategy for everyone that maybe hasn't started the business off in the right foot or would like some more information about, coming up with something on their own, especially if they don't have the budget to hire an agency. Can you maybe walk us through a 90-day plan or how you develop some sort of a branding advertising strategy, what the high points would be?
The first thing, that you really have to figure out, and we're going through this right now, and you think we would just be able to boom, 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 be done on the growth mindset, being that, we're a full-blown ad agency and we work with clients all over the world. But really understanding who is your target audience and what do they want. And what I'm getting ready to say, hopefully everybody sticks on these words, and hopefully I can explain it. You might have to translate it though. But so many times what happens is when we try to build an ad strategy, we try to tell everybody what we know, or we try to tell them how great our product is or how beautiful our widget is. But what we really need to do is turn it around and tell people how beautiful our product, our service, or our widget is, in the sense that how will it help them either save time, save money, basically improve their life. So that will resonate a lot more than you saying something like, oh, this is, for example, let's just use a vehicle. Vehicle's got 535 horsepower. Instead, tell how it's going to make you feel emotionally.
Right. And you're talking about communicating the benefits instead of the specifications or the features.
Right. And, so many times we talk about that, are you selling feature? Are you selling benefit? But it seems like when I go to the entrepreneurial groups and I talk to the entrepreneurs and I say that, it doesn't really resonate until we really, we get in, we dive in, and we start giving them examples, and I start showing them how to write copy and, write headlines and, things to put on their website. And, we like websites, for example, we talk about, doing the drunk man test. And what you want to do is, get some of your friends around, get them really drunk, and then have them look at your website really quick, make sure that they're kind of brand new friends. And then, shut the website down and say, okay, what was the website about? And if the drunk guys can't tell you what your website was about, you need to go back to the drawing board.
I agree with what you're saying. I have the squinty eye test where I squint my eyes and everything goes blurry. And then the things on the page that are most important will pop to you. So I can associate with that. You mentioned making sure that we have the right target audience. And I think this is something that can't be understated because it happens from a product side as well. When you're developing a product, you might not have an accurate picture of who your audience is, or you may end up having to pivot. Can you talk about some ways of making sure that we're talking to the right people?
Yeah, definitely. So finding your target audience is a lot different than it used to be. I mean, it used to be that we would, I need to buy, adults 25, 54, and income is in this range. I mean, that's the radio, TV, newspaper mentality. But today we have so much more ability to really, really target. And so finding your target audience. For example, let's say you're creating a product for moms, but is it moms with a first child? Is it moms with a second child? Where do these moms live? Where do these moms, where do they drive for a vehicle? What kind of income? What kind of profession are they coming from, or are they in? What kind of profession is their husband in? So really finding out that target audience, and there's so many ways to do it. You might think you know who the target audience is, but maybe you don't. And ways to find out is really use social media. And start asking the questions, and and that's a great way, a great free way to promote your product and see if it really has any legs. Who's going to really latch onto it. So I'll give you a case in point. So it was last month. I was speaking to a group of entrepreneurs. They're in this type of like a startup or whatever, like an incubator thing. And I was talking to this one woman, and her idea, and she'd already kind of really put it in. She had her little development project, I guess, whatever you would call it. She had her product ready to go, her template of a product, and it was a phone case, but the phone case would hold 2 phones. And I said, all right, and she was asking me, would you like to take one of these and try it and tell me what you think? And I'm like, well, no, not really, because I don't like putting my phone into a case. But what I did is I did a Facebook Live video with her explaining the phone case, and I was asking her about the different materials and, could I put a smaller iPhone in a larger iPhone? Does it work for a Droid? But I posted that on Facebook and asked the question, would you use this? And then it was interesting to see the people that were commenting, yes, I would, no, I wouldn't, that's stupid. Some people are kind of nasty about it. But that can help you open up an opportunity and find those individuals that can more or less be your, I guess you can say, I'll steal the word, could be a tribe for you and talk about the product and do some test studies.
Yeah, and that really is kind of the first step, right? Because if you don't have any positive response or some affirmation that you're going the right direction, I mean, this is not even people taking their wallet out for you. They're just paying attention to what you're doing on social media and hitting a like button or commenting. And so if you feel that you're not even getting that type of response, to me, it sounds like you might not have the right audience. What would you do in that type of situation?
Well, I think one of the things that I've learned, as social's growing, and I keep on talking about social, but is to create a tremendous amount of noise on social. And I don't mean noise in the negative sense of the manner, but keep on talking to the people, finding the different groups. And, that's one of the recommendations that I gave her. I said, go into the different groups, go into the entrepreneur groups, go into the sales groups, go into the real estate groups, and just ask the question, would you use a product like this? And she's like, oh, that's a good idea. So that's what I'll do. And I said, you can end up finding that niche market that will really like your product, and it will just fit in their daily life or the way they're doing, life and business and everything else. And once you find that niche, you'll be able to grow within that group. And then who knows, we've all heard about the tipping point. There could be possibly a tipping point, but this would give you a great way to say, you know what, I think I'm onto something. I've got an idea. But after you go through all of these various groups, and again, think about groups, and you're not getting anywhere with it, chances are your product probably needs to go back to the drawing board.
The hardest part there is to know if you have the wrong audience or the wrong product.
Mm-hmm.
And differentiating between the two and knowing when you have to push forward versus go back a step and maybe refine the product or service of it.
Yeah. And she asked the same thing. She goes, well, if I do that, how do I know that I'm hitting the right audience? And I said, well, I think, I said, what do you do in the evening? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, after you get home and everything else. And she said, well, I fix dinner and all that. And then finally she got to the point where, then I watch TV. And I was like, all right, well, get your iPad out and start. There's thousands and thousands of groups. And I was just giving her, because she has no budget. And so I was just giving her ideas. And I said, there's thousands and thousands of groups. Start finding the group. Start thinking about the different friends that you have and the profession that they're in, their chosen career, and start finding the group that that you have, that you think your friends could be in, and start posting that video of that product review in there and asking for input, because people love to help. People love to give advice. And this would be a great way, once you start seeing which group is interacting, now you can see, what does this person look like in this group? Are they male? Are they female? How old are they? So it can give you a really good feeling of, where am I going with this before you start spending money on, let's say pay per click or, websites or whatever, the strategies that need to be part of your product, depending on who you're trying to reach.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned that knowing your audience is probably one of the first steps that you need to establish a brand and coming up with a marketing strategy. What are some of the continuing steps? Let's assume that you've got a 90-day strategy.
The first thing you want to do on that product is you want to figure out that product, what is going to be the unique benefit to the individual that's going to be interested in it? In other words, how's it going to save them time, save them money? How's it going to make them feel different? You've got that. Find your target audience. Now that you have your target audience, look at what they're saying about the product. Really find out, what they're saying. That can help you reestablish how you're going to promote your product and what you're going to say about your product, because you might think it's going to fix a problem, the whole reason you developed it, but other people start talking about the problem it's going to fix for them. So now you're getting more or less your one-liners, your call to actions, the things that you're going to use in promoting that product. And then you keep on working that group where you build that group. And then the next step is get a website up. If either a website, or if you don't have the money to get a website, do a Facebook page that's specific to your group and start growing the audience in your group. This is the key to everything, is grow the audience. So now as you're growing the audience in that group, you've got to make sure that you have consistency. A lot of times I see people that post, once a week, once every 3 days, or they say, I don't want to overshare. Start oversharing and start talking about how, your development of your product, if you're going through development, or talk about how it's helping people. So you're constantly posting in that group, you're creating interaction. Find some people that are in that group that you call like your social lions, the individuals that have a lot of followers, and not necessarily followers, but have a number of followers. But when they're commenting, when they're talking about stuff, people are engaging them. So find the individuals. It's pretty easy to do. See the individuals that have good engagement on what they do, and see if they'll sample the product. See if you can send that product to them. Or if you don't have a product, let's say that you have a service, because most of my clientele is a service, then get them on the phone and talk to them and see if you can become a consultant, see if you can help them, see if you can kind of give them a sample to your service, because you want to make them the spokespeople of what's going on. And now once you start to establish there, now you've got moderators for your Facebook page or your Facebook group, and they can keep the discussion going and everything going with that. So that's, the way I would start it out, and that's going to take you a 90-day process before you start spending any money. But there's one thing that I would say definitely set up, and that would be your Facebook retargeting. And, I think it's pretty exciting. Instagram's coming out with shoppable ads. It won't be available to the general public yet, but it's coming out soon.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. And you alluded to one thing as you're talking to your audience, getting some of that feedback in their words. And I found that to be really helpful in marketing, is repurposing some of their terminology back in your own marketing, because some of the words that I might be using, and especially for myself, because I might be overtly technical, might not translate as well as someone that's part of that audience.
Right. Yeah. And it's so many times I see so many businesses do that, that they think they know what their product or service is filling in someone's life, what it's doing for them, but they're a little bit off. So yeah, you definitely want to start listening.
So what are your thoughts about talking about engagement now, about having one of those chat boxes on the side of your site that links up to your phone, and you can try to engage people that land on your website? In addition to connecting with people on Facebook, you might have some traffic already coming into your site. How would you try to get the feedback from people that are visiting your page? Even though your bounce rate might be low, you might not be getting any interest or sales.
Well, with chat, we've used chat for a number of years, and so have our clients. The hard part with chat, you've got two different types of chat. You have managed chat, or where someone else does it outside of your office. They handle your chat for you. And then you've got chat that, of course, you're going to handle in your office. Where we've run into difficulty, though, with that is we're a very impatient society now, that we can't even wait 30 minutes for a pizza. So if you're going to have chat, you got to make sure that you're going to manage it and, have it on all of your devices. And even then, you're going to miss some of the opportunities. So one of the things that we've been playing with and using is a program called Hotjar. And Hotjar is free to start and then really inexpensive after that. But it allows you the opportunity to also have like polls and surveys. And that's a great way to engage the audience on your website, because now you can build all these different polls and surveys specific to the page or where they're at, specific when they get ready to leave, how long they spend on the website, how many times have they visited the website, those type of things. So now you can start to get that engagement. You can ask for their email address. But you think about it, the vast majority of websites that you go to are really a glorified business card, that it doesn't engage with an individual. It's just like, oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to read stuff, but people want to engage. And with a survey, you can start to ask, when you're creating a survey, you can ask questions and say, more or less, hey, we're going to do, take this quick survey and we're going to tell you which product you should get or which service you should get. So kind of think about it this way. I'm going to kind of give you an analogy. That if I was to go to a website and it was a weight loss website, or a Get Healthy website, if they had a survey that asked me the question so I could tell you specifically what I'm wanting to do, maybe it's like, I want big arms and I want a 6-pack, but I don't really care if I have little skinny legs. So having a survey for me to tell somebody that will make a world of difference, because now I feel like that they understand where I'm coming from and they'll engage. It would just be much more of an engagement level instead of a one-size-fits-all. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, you're trying to basically substitute for two-way communication, or encourage people to kind of give some feedback and you give them something in return. How do you incentivize people to take that survey? And the reason I ask is because I've got a survey on the side of my site. Mm-hmm. for this exact reason, because I wanted to segment my audience properly. There's a lot of listeners of the Product Startup that come from different backgrounds. I have a pretty decent amount of traffic to the site, but until now I've only had 18 people take the survey, and it's a single question survey where it's visible in the right bar. You hit a button and click OK, and that's it. What would you do to encourage more people to interface with your site and with some of these things that you're putting up?
Right. So I would do testing. I would do, we talk about A/B testing, multivariate testing. Mm-hmm. So I would come up with different ways, because, in the right hand, because, like one of the ones that we have on our website, or my website, actually, on the Paul Potratz website, it's on the bottom, which is through Hotjar, and it's on the bottom right-hand corner. But a lot of times people don't really see it. And we are so click happy too, that when we do see it, we don't take time to read it. And we just make that go away real quick. And like just what we do with chat. So as you're writing your content, as you're doing your podcast, if you're doing blogs, whatever it is, and really kind of interject that into your your podcast, below your podcast, where you have a call to action button, but you have to turn the messaging around. If they take time to do the survey, how's it going to benefit them? What am I going to receive? Because the vast majority of people come, we're all this way. We're all selfish, and we're like, I don't have any time. I don't have time for that. Just give me what I want. So you've got to turn the messaging around of what's going to be the benefit to them, but play with it, move it around your website, put it into your content. And not only that, use it in social media, post on social media, take the survey. And then that way you can start understanding, you'll see a lift in it basically.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic of surveys, I'm a fan of keeping them short and sweet. So what do you think is the ideal length for a survey and the types of questions that you should ask to get the most value out of people taking their time out?
I think it's all in relation to what am I going to get at the end of the survey? So if it's a survey that's going to benefit me as the business owner, which of course it is, but if there's no way I can spin it around and say, if you take this survey, that this is what's going to be the benefit to you. For example, one of the surveys that we offer is a website report card. And with the website report card, they have, I think it's 12 questions that they've got to answer. And then we do the rest of the work. But that 12 questions will take them probably 12 to 15 minutes to fill in. And we have to pull it down because we get so many, people filling in the information, because we tell them at the end of the survey, after you answer all these questions, we're going to do an evaluation of your website. We're going to come back and tell you how you can increase the leads to your website. So it's
wow.
So you really got to, think about it that way. It's all specific to that. And it's like I have a friend that has a membership website, and boy, his survey is painful. And I've gone through it because he said, can you go through and do the survey for me and see what you think? And I came back and I was like, Daryl, boy, that thing's horrible. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah, but I'm not really interested in your product, or your service, is what you're offering. And so it's kind of hard for me to gauge it. So let's just gauge it on people coming to your website. And people come to his website. He's around 38% completion on his survey.
Wow. That's really high.
Yeah, it really is. But it's so painful. And I mean, the questions are stupid too. And we laugh about it.
Can you share what the incentive is for people to fill out that survey?
Just to see if you can join his membership website.
Huh.
That's really what it is, to see if you're a real man.
Nice.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't get it, but oh well, it works for him.
Well, while we're talking about surveys for a while, it was really popular on Facebook and some of these other sites to share these quizzes that people would take to find out, what your favorite color is, or are you this type of person, or what's your celebrity match? Mm-hmm. And that used to go viral. So are you recommending to put in an angle that's enticing in a certain way, or can you just be your business without having to pull
tricks?
Yeah.
I think it depends on your business model, or you're really not your business model, but the brand that you have. I mean, is your brand a higher level, more professional brand, that you're promoting? Because you've got to really figure out what is your persona that you're going to have. And if it's, like Daryl's is like in your face and, rough and gruff, and, he uses foul language and all that. And that's not me. So I think it can, his, are you a pansy, boob, whatever. And so it works for him. So I think, the business owner has to decide on what it is. Granted, I mean, you have to really understand your clientele or prospective clientele and what are the problems, what are their struggles. And you can be very blatant about that. Like with, we have one that's running now for our ad agency for Potrats, and it says, "Are you tired of, are you tired of trying to come up with creative ideas or something like that?" So, I mean, but we keep everything, professional and, just addressing the problems. I have a hard time coming up with creative ideas. I'm tired of, wasting ad dollars and, those type of things. So that's the direction we go in our messaging. Versus, let me give you 7 ways to be able to, create pennies, create leads for pennies on the dollar. Granted, we've done webinars like that that's done really well, but,
So do you think that type of strategy, when you're advertising your product, fits luxury products as well, or products that have maybe the value is a soft type of value? It might be harder to differentiate a product. Let's say you're advertising perfume, or it's something a bit more esoteric.
Boy, it's kind of a hard question, really, because you can see successes in both. And I'm trying to remember the name of the cologne. There's this cologne that's out there, and they call it the world's most expensive cologne. And boy, I wish I could remember the name of it, because I actually have a bottle of it. And I mean, it's pricey. It's definitely pricey, but the bottling, the way it's bottled, and it's in a gold bottle. It's got that very, I guess, Trump feel, and it's just like, eh. And but the world's most expensive cologne, $1 billion cologne, or something stupid like that. But it smells good. But I almost didn't buy it because I'm not drawn to that type of, look at me and my, whatever my name, whatever name high-end brand you want to do. So I think it's back to who do you want to target? Who's your market? I mean, because if you go to Instagram, which amazes me, you go to Instagram and you see all these different billionaire luxury Instagram feeds and all that, and they've got hundreds of thousands, millions of followers, and people showing their Lamborghinis and all that, but that wouldn't appeal to me. So who do you want to appeal to?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting there too is that a lot of the people that are following these brands don't have the money for a Lamborghini, and so there's a set of consumers that want to be included in a certain group, but they're not. How does that work with marketing?
Well, I have a friend of mine that's very successful, and the way he markets himself. And so he talks about, he was on his last book was 10X. And we've done, workshops and conferences together, and it's 10X. I don't know if you know him, Grant Cardone. And, but he has quite the following. And, how to make millions on the phone, and how to be a millionaire, and, become a millionaire, and don't be a bitch, and don't be a sissy, and all this stuff. And it's like, wow, really? But it works great for him. And then so it makes you wonder, there's that type of clientele, and he's selling his training courses and everything else for, generally it's around $1,000 for a training course. And right now he's doing 90% off or something. I don't know. So it's kind of hard. And I think you just have to pick, what are you comfortable with? How do you want to position your product? How do you want to position your brand? And just go after it, and don't waffle, and stay, full steam ahead.
No, I'm definitely familiar with Grant Cardone. He's got quite a huge following. While we're talking about that, is there a place for an entrepreneur, a small business owner's beliefs, or their moral and value compass? As we're building products, it's usually something that speaks to you because the problem that you're solving is close to you. But now as you're going out marketing, you may find that your audience wants to be marketed in a certain way, and it doesn't really match your values. How do you line that up?
Well, I think you and I talked about this last week, though, that break the audience into thirds. There's a third of the audience that's going to love you, that you can really talk to. There's a third of the audience that could be swayed to love you or hate you. And then there's a third of the audience that's going to hate you. So pick the third that you want to go after, and just make sure that the third that you're going after don't do it for the money. Do it for what makes you, and some people are going to go, the money makes me happy. Well, money's only part of it. If you're doing everything for money, I really don't think you're going to be as successful as you could be. So do it for much more than money. And if it truly is a good product, or if it is a good service, there's a third of that audience out there that's just waiting for you to come to market with it and reach them. And it's not going to happen overnight, but you have to make sure you're day in, day out going after it. Don't go for 3 weeks and have some success and then decide that you're going to party for the next 2 weeks. You got to keep on going after it, and you will grow it. There's only so many homes that you can own and so many cars you can drive. So you've got to decide, are you going to sleep well at night? And if it truly makes you happy and brings you enjoyment and fulfillment, you will be successful.
I subscribe to that for sure. So thanks for sharing that. We were talking about our 90-day strategy here. With that 90 days that we have, we said we're going to create a website or create a Facebook page, start having conversations with people in our target audience, start refining our marketing message, and maybe even start advertising to see if people will convert, will come to our site. How would you scale that from that point? Let's say you had a $1,000 budget just for the sake of scale, because you can add zeros to that. How would you chop up that budget in terms of what you would spend money on in the beginning? Like, what's most important to get right?
Oh, boy. It's going to be a hard one because it depends when someone is listening to this podcast and how far out they are. So asking me that today at this time, the way I would spend the money, because let's be honest, $1,000 budget's not a whole lot. And I mean, it might be, it is a lot, but it's not a lot when you're trying to reach its scale. So don't anybody get insulted by that. But I would focus that money again, and it depends on, and I hate saying that it depends, but it depends on the product or service you're selling. But I think the best bang for your buck right now is probably Facebook. And the way Instagram is coming on strong since Facebook owns it, I think Instagram could be a very good tool for you, and one that we've been playing with for a while, and we've had, success hasn't been phenomenal, but it's definitely been a return on investment, is Pinterest.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think it's something that we didn't touch on also is that each social network has their own particular demographic. I mean, even though you can find almost everybody on Facebook, Instagram responds really well to certain types of people or products and businesses better than, some of the other networks. Pinterest, the same. So definitely know where your audience is hanging out.
Yeah. And there's one thing I want to add to that, though, too, that here I'm talking about all the technology and such. But I think, something that's critically important that you need to really, really invest in the early, and don't be like me, let's find the newest, the newest and the best, is a CRM. And I think most business owners miss out on that they need a customer relationship management tool. And you don't have to go to the high dollar expensive ones. There's a lot of them out there that are like $30 a month. And there's even some that are free, or, $5 a month, $10 a month. But get a CRM of some type and make sure that you are a very, very diligent. And every business card you get, every person that you meet, every time you go and speak somewhere, email me for my presentation, any opportunity you can get to gather individuals' information, do it, and make sure it gets into that CRM, and spend time before you start building that CRM, knowing that you don't want just email addresses. You want to know their name. You want to know their email address. You want to know their address. So now you can start seeing where are you having success, depending if you're selling nationwide or, worldwide or whatever. So get all of the information that you can get. If you can get their mobile number, definitely get their mobile number, because you can do, as you start to expand, you can do what's called like a ringless voicemail drop. And there's nothing better than an old-fashioned phone, picking up the phone and calling somebody too. So CRM is something and I'd say the CRM is something that you need to get way early. Like that should be number 2 right after you get your business cards printed.
And I assume all that is after you have your website up and everything like that.
Honestly, if I was sitting here listening to this podcast and I was thinking, you know what, I'd like to start a business, or eventually I'm going to start a business, you need to start a CRM like as soon as you finish listening to this podcast, and start researching, find a CRM and start building that database. And ideally, if you can find a CRM that has really good social media integration, that will start pulling people from Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and so on and so forth, that's engaging with your content. So you can build a list of influencers, individuals that are engaging with your content and have an audience that's engaged with them. Know who those individuals are, and start establishing that conversation, start knowing who they are, start talking to them more, and continue to do that. Because then when it's time to launch that product or launch that service, if you have that audience to go to that knows you, you're going to go so much further, so much faster.
Until now, I thought CRMs were really for high dollar services or larger products. I wouldn't have never thought it was something that would be useful for someone that's selling, their own, cake mix online or something.
Yeah. And I mean, and we talked about it offline, and I'll just mention that to talk about the why you need a CRM. I'll harp on that forever. But, it was for years that, I worked at radio stations from the point of being a sales guy and, I was radio and TV because I popped around. I started in ad agency world first, but I started working with a CRM, and the CRM I used, I don't even know if it's in existence anymore, is called ACT. And so I used ACT as my CRM that I would load on my PC and, with a CD. And, but, I've carried that CRM as it's went through, and I mean, it's been through so many different, programs to run it. But when I finally, said, all right, I'm going to start my ad agency, I had an email database of like 275. And some of those email addresses were still Juno. I don't know if you remember that. But so I had 275 email addresses, and I started emailing that database when I started rolling out my video series, to the point now that we've built it, that we're, over 211,000 contacts. But I can pull up my CRM and I can see where people are located. I can see what part of the world they're in, where are they engaging with the content, and so on and so forth. And again, we talked about this offline, but doing that CRM, and by me out there making noise, has given me the opportunity to where I've been to Paris, France. I've been to, Denmark. I've been to Germany. I've been to Australia. I've been to Puerto Rico. I've been all through Canada, and I go there and I speak. And that's because of that CRM and working that CRM.
Yeah, and by working that CRM, you mean just tickling that file every X amount of time and sending emails to people to say, hey, here's something I found that's interesting for you, or, thanks for sharing this or that. Here's something else. Is that what you're saying by working your CRM?
Yeah, well, I would always try to come up with creative ways. Like when I was the radio sales guy, what I would do is, I had the CRM. Of course, there was a lot of fax numbers in there at that time. And I used to do a fax blast, and it would come out. It would start on Friday evening and go all through the weekend because the database had just kept on growing and growing and growing. And I would do what's called the Monday morning memo. So they would show up, and it was on some fax machines, and I know that's old school, and it was in some people's email accounts. And my Monday morning memo was just where I would write a story. And it could be a story about anything. It could be a story about something that my dog did. It could be a story about, my perspective on life and happiness, or whatever it might be. It wasn't a sales pitch. It was just a story. Well, at the end, it would be a sales pitch. And it's like, hey, if you enjoyed my story, be sure and give me a call so we can talk about your marketing, advertising, whatever it was. And so I could feed my dog. And, so people got used to having that, to the point now. I mean, years ago, that's where I started doing my video podcast, Think Tank Tuesday. And it happens every Tuesday, and it's regardless. I mean, every single Tuesday, and it's happened for years, whether I'm doing it or if I have one of, my coworkers do it. But people expect to receive it. And I have so it's every week, and my unsubscribes is extremely low, and there's a lot of people that will share it, and a lot of, every week I'm getting more and more and more signups. So do something that's going to help the person. When you're working that CRM, instead of making it a sales pitch, make it where it's a resource where they're gonna look forward to it coming, and they're gonna open it up, whether it's a video, whether it's just an email, whatever it might be. And then you can see how you can get more advanced as you move on. You can use something like MailChimp, and which has a CRM in it, and also watches the behavior when they come to your website. So now you can start reaching out to those individuals when they come to your website and have a conversation with them.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you say that, because so you were one of the original newsletter senders.
Yeah, fax blasters, fax spammers, whatever you want to call it, yeah.
Speaking about that outdated technology, what do you think that works today that didn't before, or the other way around? What has maybe worked before that doesn't today? And for everyone listening, we're recording this at the end of 2016, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. If we have people that are listening right now, and if they're old school marketers, meaning radio, TV, or newspaper, think about that form of advertising. That form of advertising is an interruption advertising. You've got to do whatever you can do to get their attention in the first 3 seconds. So that's that type of advertising. But a lot of times what happens is when individuals start, into new media, meaning your website, your email marketing, your social media post, those type of things, there's still a lot of individuals that are trying to be an announcer, trying to announce and trying to spam and grab somebody's attention. You need to turn that around and think about what the internet is. The internet, we call it the information superhighway. Thank goodness to Al Gore, right? And so if it's the information superhighway, I mean, how do we use that tool? And if we're going on, when we go online, we're going to research, we're going to find out more information. We're not going to be sold, we're going to be educated. So that's what you need to do on your website. You need to educate on the website. On Facebook, we're going to be engaged. We want interesting stories. I mean, so many times you see businesses out there that, you know, they'll have a customer that will do a purchase and they'll take a picture of that customer and go, oh, look, you know, Mary Jane and, you know, Jack just purchased blank. And they don't even tag the couple. You know, they haven't even connected with them and tagged them so all their friends and family can see it. Instead, turn that around. Tag them so their friends and family can see it and tell a story. Why did they buy from you? How did you fix a problem? I mean, let them tell the story, though. And then you go to Instagram. Why do we go to Instagram? We go there to see really cool pictures. And so many times I go to Instagram and I'm like, really? What were they thinking? Why did they post a picture of that? That's a picture like what I would see in the newspaper. So get creative with your pictures. Get creative with your storylines. And, you know, the truth of it all is you've got to use a lot of different platforms to reach people, because that's how you create frequency. It's not frequency the way it used to be. Oh, I'm going to run a frequency of 3 on TV or a frequency of 3 on radio. No, you've got to hit people on a lot of different platforms. It's a lot of work, but, you know, the cost is time. It's not necessarily money as much.
You mentioned frequency of 3. You mean people saw that particular ad 3 times?
Yeah, and that's old school thinking, because it's kind of interesting. 5 years ago, if you were doing radio or TV, you would say, oh, you get a frequency of 3. But we're getting bombarded with so many ads now. For you to cut through the clutter, you've got to hit a frequency of 21. Who can afford that now?
Yeah, and even on Facebook, the natural organic stuff that used to get eyeballs doesn't anymore. No. You know, Facebook has been prioritizing live video, then recorded video, then photo posts, for example, and then text posts, and then maybe links last, depending on what your friends engage in, or at least that's been my experience.
Yeah, mine too.
It's been frustrating because really what Facebook has turned into, for me anyway, it's been a way for me to connect to my target audience if I want to have conversations with them, and maybe to do some targeted advertising. But in terms of a publishing platform or a place where I can put articles or content and get feedback that way, it just hasn't been there for me.
Yeah, well, they're forcing you. You have to spend money now. So one of the things that we do, like with our, you know, and what we'll do, like where you and I did the podcast, is we do what's called custom audiences. So with a custom audience, you take your email database, hence another reason you want to build a CRM. You take that email database and why you want to have those mobile numbers in there. You go into Facebook, you can upload it in the back, you create a custom audience. It will try to find those individuals based on their email address and their mobile number. So now all those individuals that are in your database will see your social media post that you put into a custom audience and you boosted it. And then you can do what's called a lookalike audience too. So you're targeting your custom audience of people that are in your database that are your target market, that have shown interest, expressed interest, downloaded white papers off your website or product guides or whatever it might be. And it will go out and say, okay, well, if these, what are other individuals like these that have the same interests, the same hobbies, the same profiles, the same income, so on and so forth. So that's a great way to increase your audience and your reach. And it's right now, it's still pretty low cost.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the audience size. So taking back a step, I think we mentioned installing the Facebook tracking pixel. Definitely do that if you haven't already, because it's going to take days to get all that data. The reason for that is because Facebook wants to anonymize the data that's coming back, and so it needs a certain amount of data before it can show you that custom audience that you've created. When I've tried to extrapolate that audience out and target all visitors of my site within 90 days and create a lookalike audience from that, the audience just ends up being massive. And I find that my ads are way less effective than a really targeted audience in a certain area. How would you chop that up so it's getting more bang for the buck?
So what I've done is back into my CRM again. So I look into my CRM and where are we having the best, you know, really, I guess the best interaction, the best engagement. What part of the country? Is there a city? Is there a state? Is there a country? And does that match up with where we're trying to sell, where we're trying to promote? Maybe we want to have a conference there or whatever it might be. So based on that information, so that helps us bring the audience down. So it's not, oh, look, we're targeting, 2 million people. Instead, we're targeting a much more specific audience. And then you constantly have to be doing different ads and testing and see which ones are going to get the highest engagement. But then I would also supplement that with Facebook Live videos. That's been pretty successful for a number of our clients. I need to do a better job of it. But in Facebook Live videos, it's coming really fast that you're going to be able to do ads within the Facebook Live video too. But Facebook Live, it's free. Why not use it? I mean, we used to use the pitch so many times when I sold radio and TV. It's like, let me tell you how our audience is. We've got X number of people in our audience, and if I could give you a megaphone and you could stand in the middle of the Coliseum and you could tell everybody about your business to 2,000 people, would you do it? And they're like, oh, yeah, I would do it. Well, that's what you can do with Facebook Live.
Yeah, if you're connected to the right people, I suppose. Or how does that work? It's basically your friends see that notification, because I'm always notified of people going live on my feed. Mm-hmm. I think it's just people that I follow or pages that I subscribe to, or who sees that feed? It's
supposed to be individuals that you're connected with. So your friends that you're connected with is what it's supposed to be. But what's interesting though, there's been every time that I go and do a Facebook Live video, there's people that come in and start watching the video that I'm not even connected to. So how they're seeing it, I don't really know. But it's like Grant and I, we were talking about this because we've done conferences and everything, and his philosophy is just throw it all against the wall. It's free. Why aren't you doing it? For example, right now, because I've got a podcast coming up with him, there's no doubt he's going to have a camera running. He's going to have, Instagram video running. He's going to have Facebook Live running. He's going to have everything, every social site he can have running focused on when we're doing the podcast to increase his audience.
Yeah, just be everywhere.
Be everywhere. And I mean, he's to the point that people are like, oh man, I'm so tired of seeing him. But I don't know what's wrong with me, my hesitation. Because really, I'm an introvert. I'm shy. But, and that's what we need to do as business owners is create just a massive amount of noise. But you want to make sure that noise, as much as possible, is a resource, is a benefit to the people watching it, that they're like, oh, that's good information.
Excellent tips, Paul. We're nearing the end of the show here. So could you tell everybody how they could find you and get more information about your podcast and your business?
Sure. So I'll give them probably the easiest way is just to do a search for me, my first name Paul and the last name Potratz, which if you spell pot rats and put a Z on the end, you'll have it, which is Potratz. So just do that search and then you'll find my website, go there, check it out, or social media of choice, because I am a social media prostitute the best I can be.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you very much, sir. Here are 3 takeaways that we can apply to our businesses. Number 1, benefits versus features and specifications. So oftentimes we're neck deep in our businesses and we talk to friends, spouses, other family members, and have code about some specific detail of our products. It's really easy to get lost in the specifications, and we talk about all the ingredients, how the sausage is made, and not really how it tastes. I need to make a conscious effort to switch gears when I talk to potential customers about my products and services. And I really need to make sure that I lead with the benefit to that person or company. How will this product save them more time or money or bring them more joy to their life? What urgent need am I solving? This is really how we should be leading conversations with our target market. Number 2, DIY validation. As Paul illustrated, it's technically not difficult to get feedback on our product ideas and get the word out about our business, even on a minimal budget. We can strike up conversations with our target market and get their thoughts without asking leading questions. I do this as much as I can on The Product Startup, and the emails and Skype calls I've had with many of you shaped how this show sounds today. It's the same with my product on Amazon. I use a service to send an email to customers when my product ships, and I follow up after receipt of delivery. Even with some tweaks, I get maybe 10 emails a week on 200 orders. But I know I wouldn't be able to improve on the design of the product otherwise. There's just no way to get that info without speaking to customers directly. It's definitely worth the time and effort to parse through the noise. We just have to sit down and do it. Number 3, you can't please everyone. Pick the 1/3 of your audience that makes you happy and push forward. We all know that if we take a stance on something, chances are some people won't agree with it. Product design is really no different. We're putting our opinion, our view of the solution out there. And from where I'm sitting, building a business is hard, so I don't want to overcomplicate my life by working with people who don't appreciate what I'm putting out, or even worse, turning into someone that I'm not and forcing myself to keep up appearances. I love the classic Churchill quote, "You have enemies? Good. That means you've stood up for something sometime in your life." So if you've got any questions or comments, I've put all the links that we've covered under the show notes posted on theproductstartup.com/35. Join me next week as I speak with Gavin Chrisman. He's the co-founder of Green and Blue, a product design company based in Southwest England. Green and Blue creates a beautiful range of innovative, award-winning products for wildlife and nature, and we're going to take a closer look at their work in ceramics and concrete. So tune in next week to hear that episode. Have you brought your own physical product to market, or do you know someone that has? Let me know. Drop me a note by going to theproductstartup.com or emailing me at philip@theproductstartup.com. I'd love to have you on the show. So thanks again for joining me today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Product Startup Podcast, the show that teaches you what it really takes to bring your product to market and turn it into a big success. This podcast series is brought to you by Mako Design and Invent, the first firm in North America to provide global caliber end-to-end physical consumer product development to startups, inventors, and small product businesses. If you're looking for product development help on your invention, head over to makodesign.com. That's MAKO design.com for a free consultation from one of Mako Design's 4 design studios from coast to coast. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.